Hello, my name is Serhi.
And I'm Emma, and today we're going to talk about the Velociraptor.
So why is he feathered? The Velociraptor in the movies looks completely different.
Yes, indeed, we're used to seeing dinosaurs without feathers. For a long time, scientists believed that all dinosaurs were covered in scales, like reptiles. However, in recent years, new discoveries indicate that some dinosaurs did have feathers after all.
But about the feathers later, there's something else important. Behind us, is that not a Velociraptor?
In movies, we're used to seeing velociraptors as large, scale-covered predators, hunting in packs and fearlessly attacking much larger animals, tearing their victims' flesh with their signature claws. However, that's not actually the case.
I repeat, behind us is not a Velociraptor, it's a Utahraptor.
And here is the Velociraptor. We will tell you about both these dinosaurs.
The thing is, Michael Crichton, the author of Jurassic Park, chose deinonychus as his prototype, which was considerably larger than a Velociraptor and at that time was widely believed to hunt in coordinated packs. However, he ultimately decided to keep the name Velociraptor, simply because it sounded better, but even deinonychus wasn't as massive as depicted in the film.
In 1991, a claw was discovered by various paleontologists in the state of Utah, and later, other remains of a dinosaur were found. This creature was named Utahraptor, meaning robber from Utah or thief from Utah. Then, in 1993, precisely when the film Jurassic Park was released, the dinosaur was officially given the species name Utahraptor ostromyces, honoring paleontologists John Ostrom and Chris Mays.
Rumor has it that Spielberg was offered a deal. A Utahraptor would be given a species name in honor of the director if he funded future paleontological research. However, as we can see, the Utahraptor does not bear Spielberg's name, so either it is just a rumor, or they simply did not agree on the price.
What's interesting is that Crichton described in his work, and then Spielberg filmed, a dinosaur whose size is closer to a Utahraptor than a Velociraptor. However, in popular culture, it's the latter that's associated with a quite large predatory dinosaur that hunts in packs.
And now, let's break down each raptor separately. Utahraptor, the largest dromaeosauridae, was about 6 to 7 meters long, with its tail making up a significant portion. Paleontologists debate its weight, but on average it was around 400 to 500 kilograms, and its famous claw was about 24 centimeters long.
Just like the one Professor Grant shows in Jurassic Park, the Utahraptor lived in the territory of present-day USA about 130 million years ago. In the film, the excavations were also conducted in the territory of the USA.
And finally, we move on to the Velociraptor. Two species are known to have lived in Asia about 70 to 75 million years ago. The more well-known and studied Velociraptor mongoliensis was discovered back in 1924 in Mongolia. Velociraptor means swift thief or robber or bandit. This dromaeosauridae was about 1.5 to 2 meters long, approximately half a meter tall, and weighed around 15 to 20 kilograms. Its signature claw was about 6 centimeters long.
Here's your scary movie killer, though. Admittedly, it's turkey-sized. You could fantasize about a velociraptor as a household pet. Imagine, you're walking your velociraptor in the park in the morning and you meet people walking their dogs. Do you want your pet to always be healthy, active, and happy? Choose Raptorbite pet food, a fully balanced and nutritious meal for daily energy and overall well-being. Raptorbite, more protein, more strength, more instinct.
It's time for us to revisit feathers. As we've discussed before, we're accustomed to seeing dinosaurs covered in scales just like reptiles. However, the fossilized remains of certain dinosaurs have been discovered with clear feather impressions. But what about our characters? Let's begin with the Velociraptor. None of the Velociraptor skeletons discovered had feather impressions, yet they were found on other dromaeosauridae specimens. However, in 2007, during a comprehensive examination of a Velociraptor skeleton, paleontologists identified quill knobs on the bones of its forelimbs. These exact same structures are present in modern birds, and it is to these that flight feathers are attached.
However, they are rarely found in flightless birds. You should pay particular attention to this point. The presence of these quill knobs indicates the presence of feathers, but their absence does not necessarily mean feathers were absent, as modern flightless birds all possess feathers, yet they do not have these specific quill knobs. And this means that even if a dinosaur's fossilized remains don't display feather imprints, and if there are no specific quill knobs visible on its limbs, there still remains a distinct possibility that the dinosaur was, in fact, feathered. At the very least, this particular consideration applies to theropods, which were known to be very close relatives of modern birds.
So to summarize, the Velociraptor had quill knobs, suggesting the presence of flight feathers. Most likely it was covered in fine feathers, and on its forelimbs it also possessed flight feathers. However, based on its anthropometric data, it was in fact a flightless creature.
The presence of flight feathers on a flightless dinosaur may suggest flying ancestors, but their descendants lost this ability. Among them was the Velociraptor. However, it's also possible that Velociraptor's ancestors weren't flying either, and their flight feathers served a different purpose.
There's another interesting point related to feathers. Why did dinosaurs even have feathers? Besides helping modern birds fly and being used in courtship displays to attract partners, feathers have another very important function: thermoregulation. Feathers in birds and fur in mammals help retain the heat produced by the body. This is especially important for small creatures, for whom retaining heat is more challenging.
So we come to a very interesting and important conclusion. Feathers on dinosaurs are indirect evidence of their warm-bloodedness. Fur or feathers would only hinder a cold-blooded animal from efficiently obtaining heat from the outside. So the Velociraptor, which, like all theropods, is related to birds, most likely had feathers and was warm-blooded.
However, studies on dinosaur bone development showed that their growth rate was slower than that of modern warm-blooded animals, birds, and mammals. This indicates a relatively slow metabolism. The Velociraptor was an active and fast predator. We will talk about this later. The creature must be warm-blooded and have a fast metabolism for such tasks.
And that's where the kiwi from New Zealand comes to our aid. This modern, warm-blooded, flightless bird possesses a rather slow metabolism. The kiwi is a nocturnal, active bird, busy searching for various invertebrate prey. This unique bird can better explain to us what warm-blooded dinosaurs might have been like.
And now, let's turn our attention to the Utahraptor. In its fossil remains, no feather impressions were found, nor were the quill knobs to which flight feathers attach ever discovered. However, feathered remains were found in various older dromaeosauridae relatives, and similarly quill knobs in Velociraptor, which lived later than Utahraptor. So, Utahraptor has older relatives who definitely had feathers, and there are also dromaeosaurids who had feathers and lived after Utahraptor. And on top of all this, they are very close relatives of birds.
Of course, some people believe that Utahraptor did not have feathers, that it might have descended from a line of featherless dinosaurs, or that it lost them as Utahraptor is quite large and can retain heat more easily. So there is a slight chance that it was a large white crow among dromaeosauridae. However, our conclusion is this: Utahraptor was also warm-blooded and feathered, just like Velociraptor.
Let's talk about the claws and behavior of the Velociraptor. A universally known and defining characteristic is their sharp claw. In films, we often see velociraptors attacking much larger dinosaurs in packs, inflicting deep lacerating wounds upon them. But was this truly the reality? Dromaeosauridae characteristically have 4 toes on their feet. The first is usually rudimentary, the second toe is curved upward and has a famously long, sharp claw, and the animal uses the third and fourth toes for walking or running. As we have mentioned earlier, this claw was about 6 centimeters in size. During experiments, it was found that the claw could pierce the skin covering, but not cut through flesh. Studies of its leg bones also showed that the Velociraptor was quite fast, and the mobility of its toes resembled the talons of modern eagles and owls.
So, the Velociraptor was a swift, active predator that would pursue its prey, using its claws to hold the victim firmly, pressing it down to the ground, much like modern birds of prey do. And its feathered forelimbs could be used to maintain balance.
Did velociraptors hunt in packs? There is no direct evidence. While fossil sites of herbivorous dinosaurs have been found with several dromaeosauridae, no such remains have been discovered with velociraptors.
The remains of several deinonychus were discovered alongside a Tenontosaurus. Given that the animals were preserved together, something must have happened that caused them to die in the same place at the same time. Perhaps the Tenontosaurus got stuck in a bog, and the deinonychus wanted to feast on it, and the clumsiest among them also fell into the trap.
However, we cannot know for certain whether it was a pack or just different deinonychuses that happened together to feast on easy prey. It might have been something similar to the way modern vultures and scavengers group together to eat a carcass. Velociraptors are close relatives of birds, but it's hard to recall modern predatory birds that hunt in a coordinated pack, like lions, wolves, or African wild dogs. Most often, they are solitary predators. Also, birds of prey hunt in pairs, a male and a female. Sometimes there are cases when, for example, several falcons attack a flock of birds, but not as a coordinated group, but each for themselves. So the overall picture that emerges is that most likely, velociraptors were solitary predators or hunted in pairs, male and female.
Given the absence of direct evidence for pack behavior and taking into account the velociraptor's modest dimensions, it appears highly improbable that it would have been able to attack big dinosaurs. More than likely, it primarily hunted much smaller prey. Remains of a Protoceratops were also discovered, with Velociraptor teeth fragments found on its jaw. Research into this find led scientists to conclude that the Protoceratops had been long dead when the Velociraptor found it, suggesting carrion could also have been part of its diet.
But that's not all. In 1971, the remains of a Protoceratops and Velociraptor that died fighting each other were found. Most likely, a sudden collapse of a sand dune buried two dinosaurs during a fight. The Velociraptor was underneath the Protoceratops, its right foreleg clamped in the Protoceratops' beak, and its hind claw in the Protoceratops' neck. This suggests Velociraptors might have used their claws for stabbing wounds to the victim's neck, and that adult Protoceratops could have been part of their diet. Protoceratops weighed around 8 to 1000 kilograms, which is about 4 to 5 times the size of a Velociraptor. It is possible that it primarily attacked old and sick animals, hunting young ones. There is a thought that in this case, the Velociraptor wanted to catch a young Protoceratops, but an adult stood up to defend it, and it was in the midst of their battle that a sand dune buried them.
So, to summarize, the Velociraptor was a swift, active predator that hunted either alone or in pairs, a male and a female. Its diet consisted of smaller creatures, Protoceratops, young and possibly even adults, primarily those that were weakened or old. It could also feed on carrion. And now it's the Utahraptor's turn. Skeletal studies showed it had very strong hind limbs, but it wasn't as fast as the Velociraptor. This suggests that the Utahraptor might have hunted from ambush. Its signature claw was about 24 centimeters long. As for pack hunting, again, there's no direct evidence that Utahraptors hunted in a
There is a discovery of a common burial of several Utahraptors of different ages, and probably some iguanodon that was prey. This suggests that Utahraptors took care of their offspring. Perhaps the adult pair hunted the prey, and then the children came to the feast. Probably the prey was driven into a swamp, where along with it perished the careless family of Utahraptors.
So there is no direct evidence of pack hunting for Utahraptor. It remains only to assume that, by analogy with predatory birds, Utahraptors hunted individually, perhaps in male and female pairs. They also likely incubated and cared for their offspring. It's probable that the same applied to Velociraptors, but once again there is no direct evidence.
About the hunting habits of the Utahraptor, it was quite a large and strong predator, weighing as much as a modern bear, so it could hunt big prey. There have been no discoveries of Utahraptor with the remains of other dinosaurs inside, so we can only speculate who might have been the potential prey of the Utahraptor. At the same time, in the Utahraptor's habitat, iguanodonts like Iguanocolossus and Hippodraco were found. Primarily, these could have been their young, old, or sick individuals. Also find the young of sauropods, Cedarosaurus and Alamosaurus. Adult sauropods of that period, although smaller in size than the well-known giants Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus, still probably had no natural enemies, possibly young Gastonia, as adult individuals were very well protected and would have been difficult and dangerous prey for a Utahraptor. Also, Camptosaurus, Falcarius, and other comparatively smaller dinosaurs could have become prey.
Utah's nature preserve is waiting for you to explore. Horseback rides through its incredible landscapes offer the perfect way to truly experience nature and escape from the everyday routine. So as we see, the Velociraptor was an active and fast predator but quite small in size. Most likely it hunted alone, so it mainly terrorized small inhabitants of its habitat.
But Utahraptor, with its impressive size, posed a threat even to quite large dinosaurs. However, it most likely hunted alone, or in a pair, a male and a female.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Whoever is the first to comment under the video, "I like Velociraptor" or "I like Utahraptor" will be greeted in the next video. See you!